Welcome to the Our State Book Club podcast. I'm your host, New York Times best-selling author and North Carolina native Wiley Cash. In today's episode, we return to Asheville, North Carolina, where we sit down with author Sarah Addison Allen to discuss her first novel, The Beloved Garden Spells, about two sisters in a small mountain town who have both magic and tragedy at their fingertips. The novel debuted on the New York Times bestsellers list in 2007 and jump-started Sarah's career. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us again for our second episode. Can you tell us a little bit about Garden Spells, maybe a little about where the idea came from and how you came to write it?
It was a process of writing it. It didn't come to me fully formed, and it didn't have magic in it when I first started writing. It was at first it was just a novel about two sisters reconnecting after many years, and I do remember very clearly the scene when Sydney, the sister who ran away from home as soon as she could, but she comes back with her young daughter, and she pulls her car behind the house, and she gets out, and an apple rolls out of the garden to her feet. And I remember that scene vividly because I went, where did that apple come from?
Oh, wow.
What's going on? And then I realized that apple tree just threw that apple, didn't it?
Yeah.
And so I sort of went back and sort of reconfigured the book to put that magical element into it, and it became a whole new book that way. But I remember that clearly. That apple changed the whole book.
So this is a novel in which Claire is the older sister who stayed home in Bascom. They've kind of had a peripatetic life. The mother's kind of always been on the run from something and moving around, and they kind of were raised by their grandmother, who's now passed. And Sydney leaves home as soon as she can. She has a crazy story. We'll let the reader get into that. She returns home years later, and she and Claire aren't on the best of terms. And Claire has this ability to use the things from her garden to affect the lives, the futures of people in this town through her catering service and the things that she makes in town. And Sydney has other talents. But this family, the Waverly family, is known far and wide as being outsiders in a town where they have been where they should have been insiders for a very long time. And what I was talking about in the last episode, as soon as Claire is on the page, she lives so vivid in my mind. As soon as Sydney was on the page, she lives so the other characters, the next door neighbor that is kind of the love interest, the older woman who gives the gifts, Ariel, the mean, rich lady.
Right.
They as soon as they were on the page, I was like, oh, I know who these people are. How do you do that? Like, what is that process of the immediacy of revelation of character for you?
I think it doesn't come right away. I think it comes with revision. But also, I think with Garden Spells, out of all of my books, the characters in the books most closely resemble people I know. My real sister's name was Sydney.
Oh, wow.
We had a very contentious relationship, my sister and I, so we didn't get along. Even the woman in the book who gives people random gifts.
Yes, she's always lugging things around like somebody might need this later.
Right.
Yeah,
and they always do. That's her magical ability. She was based on a friend of my great aunt's who lived across the street from my great aunt Charlotte, and her name was Evenel, and she was.
It's a beautiful name. I'd never seen it before.
It's a very good Southern name.
It is.
But she was forever bringing my great aunt Charlotte buckets of blackberry, or she'd made a sweet potato pie, and this to my great aunt Charlotte was frustrating because Charlotte always thought she had to return the favor. So here comes Evenel with another gift. But Evenel loved giving people things.
Sure.
So she was sort of in the whole canon of my books. Evenel is the only person who is based on a real life person with the same characteristics. But I think I was a bit like Claire back then. I was very set in my ways. I'm very scared of things, whereas my sister wasn't. And Sydney was very wild. And so I think in terms of Garden Spells, in particular Garden Spells, I think the characters may seem more real because they were.
Yeah. That's so interesting. And also what might be a little real is the town of Bascom, where the novel is set. And I saw some similarities to Asheville in Western North Carolina. I mean, Hickory's close by, they're just down the mountain. What was it like to fictionalize the place you know better than any place in the world, in the footsteps of like Thomas Wolfe fictionalized this place, Wilma Dykeman, John Ely, these other natives of this area fictionalized it as well. So what was that process like for you?
I think the familiarity comes from knowing a place so well, and particularly Asheville is of course a big tourist town. Our economy is driven by tourism, and I think nearly every book I've written is set in a tourist town. I think Bascom is more of a college town,
Yes,
but it does
Orion
rely on
College is there,
right,
yeah.
and but it does rely on tourism as well. I have tried a couple of times to actually base my books in real cities, and I find that very limiting, because then I start getting into the details of, here's the street intersection, as if I'm giving a tour.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I have to fictionalize things, because then I can take creative license.
Sure.
But it is based on my heart and soul being in Asheville and understanding a southern town, understanding a southern tourist town, understanding southern food, and sometimes even southern relationships. So.
We will be right back after a quick break with Sarah Addison Allen.
Elon University is proud to support the Our State Book Club. In the same way great authors bring North Carolina stories to life, Elon is committed to fostering knowledge, creativity, and lifelong learning across our state. Discover how Elon University shapes thoughtful leaders at www.elon.edu.
We are back with Sarah Addison Allen discussing her wonderful book, Garden Spells. In the last segment, you mentioned Southern food. So this is a novel that features a collision between food and gardening. And I am wondering how much research you had to do, both culinary and botanical, to know this many recipes that involve and require this much botanical ingredients. Was that a lot of work?
It was, as I recall, the research itself was fun, and I still have to this day. I was printing out things at that time. I went from botanical.com. I was printing out a lot of things. I was looking up medicinal uses for plants, and then I was taking that and putting a magical spin on it. And I've always loved to eat, so of course, any chance I get to eat, I will, but I am not a cook, and I'm not a gardener. I hate both of those things. I love to eat, and I love flowers, but I come from a long line of women.
You said your mother was
My mother,
very active in the kitchen, right?
Yeah. She was a great cook, and she loved being outside. And my great aunt Charlotte, who was, a big influence to me all my life. I never knew any of my grandparents, so great aunt Charlotte was my grandparent. She was a wonderful cook, and she was a wonderful gardener. And I don't know how I landed in a book that had a caterer that cooked and gardened, but so it did take a fair amount of research, but I don't recall it being tedious.
Well, for me, research is always the most fun part, because somebody's already done the work and you just find it.
Right.
But then you got to go write about it and you're like, I don't want to do that. Let's do more research,
Well, the beauty of magical realism is you can put your own spin on it. You don't have to be true to what a real life use of a flower is, or a real life medicinal use of a flower is. You can put a spin on it. And as long as you present it in a way that it works in the world in which you've created, I think that's the latitude I enjoy the most about magical realism.
Was your upbringing, you've been here for a long time, your family's been here for a long time. Were they people who used local plants for medicinal purposes at all, or was that something you just found
I,
after that apple fell from the
it's
tree, and
true,
you were,
it
yeah.
is. It was. I think I knew Claire was a caterer, but oh, I haven't thought about this in forever. I remember seeing a Martha Stewart Living magazine article about edible flowers, and she used crystallized pansies on a cake. I remember that. That might have been the germ of the idea.
Mm-hmm.
My gosh, I haven't
Well, there's a scene where I think Sydney has just come home, and Claire is dredging pansies in egg white and then dredging them in sugar and putting them on a cake.
That's right. The
Yeah.
white cake with crystallized flowers on it.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Because
Yeah, I remember
oh
that.
my gosh, it's been a while since I've revisited that book, but I remember having to study it because I wrote the sequel to it, First Frost, and I had forgotten so much. So it was like reading it all over again. It was like, wow, I said that. There were passages I don't remember writing.
Yeah. Well, that's usually the best stuff.
No.
When I don't, I was talking with Denise Kiernan in the previous episode, I guess, which would be for November, and we were talking about how the writing that you remember every period, it just feels it feels like labor. But the stuff you don't remember, you're like, oh, I wrote that. That sounds kind of good. Yeah, I forgot about that. Well, speaking about the act of writing, I like to think about, the books don't change. Like the books on the shelf, they never change. But the time in our lives at which we read them or at which we wrote them, those are the changeable factors, right? And this is a book about two sisters. Your sister's name was Sydney. The sister in this book is Sydney. And I don't want to get too autobiographical, but you lost your sister a couple of years ago. Is this a book that you could write now, or would you write it differently? Or what would that experience be like for you, if you're willing to answer that?
It would probably be a different book if I wrote it now, just because I'm a different writer now. I think the more we write and the more years we live, we're not the same writers we are when we wrote our debut novels, for sure. Interestingly enough, the book I'm writing right now started out as a sister book, which was the first sister book I've written since Garden Spells. And I couldn't make it work for some reason, and I don't know why. So it's turned into a friendship book. I think my idea of a sister book today would be different from Garden Spells. I don't think it would be. I don't think it would be as young and starry-eyed. I don't think it would be as romantic as I wrote it in Garden Spells. It would probably be a sister book for me today would be. Oh my gosh, it would probably address a lot of regret. And it's the regret you get only as you get older. You don't really have that kind of regret when you're younger, particularly with a sibling, because you think you're going to have all this time to, hash out your differences, but you don't. And so I think that would be my my idea of a sister book now would be. It would be tinged with regret.
Sure.
Yeah.
Is the book that you're working on now, was it tinged with regret, and was it making it tough to write, or was it just not working, that dynamic not working in the book?
It wasn't working. I think I was trying to make one sister the victim and one sister completely messed up. And truthfully, that probably would be a little autobiographical, but it didn't work. Just because there was one sister that went through the trauma and the other sister that was dragged along in it. And I was focusing more on the sister that was dragged along in it when the trauma happened to one sister. So I kept that character for whom the trauma happened. And it made for a better book, for sure.
That's so interesting. Yeah. Well, again, we are here at the holiday season. What are some holiday dishes or traditions in your family that you've held on to or particularly look forward to?
My family on my mother's side, interestingly enough, the Appalachian Mountains were, settled by, Scottish, Irish, English, even French. There was a small but vibrant Swedish community in Asheville, and my great-grandfather was a Swedish immigrant. So my mother's side of the family had, like, smorgasbord, like, they had herring and they had rye bread and pickled stuff. And this was in my way back memory. I don't remember that specifically. What I do remember was my mom making, I'm going to butcher this word, kraskakas. They're potato dumplings filled with salted pork. I remember this. But as my sister and I, got older and, we would go to when we were adults, we would go to our mom's house for Christmas. For decades, Christmas meant BLTs and Die Hard.
Oh, I like that
Always
Christmas.
watch
That's a
Die
good
Hard.
Christmas.
Yeah, there are people out there who do not think that Die Hard is a Christmas
It's the
movie.
best Christmas movie ever.
It is a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
So that is my best adult memory.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
It's BLTs and Die Hard.
That is so wonderful. Well, this has been such a treat, Sarah. Thank you so much
Wiley.
for doing this with me.
Yes, absolutely.
Elon University believes in the power of stories to engage and inspire our community. That's why Elon is proud to sponsor the Our State Book Club, showcasing conversations with writers who reflect the heart of our state. Learn how Elon University is igniting discovery and dialogue in North Carolina at www.elon.edu.
From day one at Elon University, you're empowered. Engaged learning, meaningful mentorship, celebrated individuality. Transform your potential into purpose and become a leader the world needs at Elon University.
What might it be like underneath the sunrise in a state of flight? Coming back on me, it seems wonderful, the wandering mountain birds on a beach. Never moments ever wasted, turning away from your love. Honeybees, gardens of sweeter fruit never tasted, no turning to other things. Will you be, will you seem? Sweeter fruit never tasted, don't turn your back on me. Mountains pushing into the sea, mountains into the sea.